10 banned racing innovations that actually worked 80 seconds. Remember the moment you first discovered a racing idea so clever and so revolutionary that it changed the entire sport, only to be outlawed almost immediately? What if I told you that some of the most brilliant engineering breakthroughs in motorsport history were banned not because they failed, but because they worked too well? Some were considered too powerful. Others were seen as too dangerous. And a few were simply so dominant that rulemakers had no choice but to shut them down. Today we're looking at 10 banned racing innovations from the 1960s through the 1980s that performed so effectively they forced officials to step in. From cars that literally pulled themselves toward the asphalt, to engines that made competitors look painfully slow, these machines became the most infamous legends in racing history. If you enjoy racing history, hit that like button. Now let's dive into these forbidden speed machines. Number 10. The NASCAR 426 Hemi engine. The year was 1964, and NASCAR was about to witness something that would shake the sport to its core. Chrysler engineers had secretly been developing a brand new engine. Inside the company they called it the Elephant. Officially, it was the 426 cubic inch Hemi. When the engine appeared at Daytona, nobody was ready for what happened next. Richard Petty grabbed the pole position. Then he went on to win the race by 2 full laps. Not a small margin. 2 complete laps ahead of second place. It was total domination. Hemi-powered cars finished in the top 3 positions, making the rest of the field look like they were driving in reverse. The engine produced about 500 horsepower, while most rivals struggled to reach 400. But power wasn't the only reason it was special. The Hemi's hemispherical combustion chambers allowed massive valves and extremely efficient airflow. The engine breathed better than anything else on the track. Chrysler had essentially built a full racing engine disguised as a production motor. And that became the problem. NASCAR officials saw the results from Daytona and panicked. For the 1965 season, the Hemi was completely banned. Their reasoning was simple. It wasn't available in regular production vehicles, which violated the spirit of stock car racing. Chrysler was furious and withdrew from NASCAR entirely, taking Richard Petty and several other drivers with them. The sport's popularity dropped sharply. Attendance fell and television ratings suffered. Eventually, NASCAR gave in, but with one condition. Chrysler had to build a street version of the engine and sell it to the public. So, in 1966, the legendary Street Hemi was born. The engine returned to NASCAR and dominated through the late 1960s. The message was clear. If you become too fast, the rulebook will eventually catch up with you. Number 9. The Formula One Turbo Era. The turbocharged era of Formula One didn't begin with excitement. It started with laughter. In 1977, Renault arrived with a turbocharged engine, and most teams mocked it. The yellow car constantly broke down and produced clouds of smoke, earning the nickname the Yellow Teapot. Teams running naturally aspirated engines believed Renault's idea was pointless. They were very wrong. By the early 1980s, the turbo revolution had begun, and by the middle of the decade, qualifying engines were producing over 1,400 horsepower. From a 1.5-liter engine, these cars were no longer ordinary race machines. They were missiles. BMW's turbocharged 4-cylinder engine could spin beyond 11,000 revolutions per minute while producing enormous boost pressure. Drivers sometimes used engines designed to survive only a single qualifying lap. Engineers pushed the boost so high the pistons could melt if the engine ran for more than a few minutes. Drivers later admitted that qualifying sessions were terrifying. Costs exploded as well. Some teams spent tens of millions of dollars every season on engine development alone. The FIA attempted to control the situation by limiting boost pressure and fuel capacity, but engineers constantly found clever ways around the restrictions. Finally, officials decided enough was enough. Turbo engines would be completely banned starting in 1989. The naturally aspirated engines that replaced them produced far less power. Formula One had pushed technology so far that it had to step backwards. Number 8. High-mounted Formula One wings. The 1968 season was the moment Formula One truly discovered downforce. Instead of small spoilers and tiny fins, teams began mounting enormous wings high above the cars on thin supports. Some wings towered nearly 6 feet above the body. They looked ridiculous, like airplane wings bolted upside down onto racing cars. But they worked brilliantly. These wings were mounted directly to the suspension, instead of the body, meaning the aerodynamic force pushed directly onto the wheels. Cornering speeds increased dramatically. Drivers described the sensation as if a giant invisible hand was pressing the car into the track. But that same hand could disappear instantly. The tall supports holding the wings were often simple aluminum tubes that flexed violently at high speed. At one race, Two Lotus cars suffered wing failures on the very same lap. Later, during another event, a wing collapsed at around 140 miles per hour, sending the car flying off the circuit. That was enough. At the next race, the FIA banned the tall wings completely. From then on, wings had to be mounted directly to the body and kept within strict dimensions. In only 4 months, the high wing concept transformed Formula One and then vanished forever. Number 7. NASCAR winged aero warriors. By the end of the 1960s, NASCAR teams had discovered a serious problem. Stock cars were reaching an aerodynamic barrier at around 180 miles per hour. Their boxy bodies pushed through the air like giant bricks. Then Dodge decided to do something radical. They built the Charger Daytona, a car with a long, pointed nose and an enormous rear wing. The nose extended the car by roughly 18 inches, and the wing stood about 23 inches tall. At first, teams laughed at the design. Then it hit the track. During testing, the Daytona became the first stock car to break 200 miles per hour. Plymouth quickly responded with the Superbird, designed partly to lure Richard Petty back from Ford. These strange-looking machines dominated the superspeedways, but NASCAR leadership became nervous. The cars were extremely expensive, smaller teams couldn't compete, and speeds were climbing dangerously high. So for the 1971 season, NASCAR introduced a rule that effectively killed the aero cars by limiting their engine size while allowing larger engines in standard cars. Overnight, the wings and nose cones disappeared. Today, those winged machines are worth millions to collectors. Back then, dealerships couldn't give them away.